It appears the microphone wasn't working, and thank you, Harrison, for actually letting me know. I've been rambling on and feeling like, everyone's getting a clear voice. I was wrong. Oh, classic. I'm in a different room than I'm usually doing the setup, so I've had to reinstall everything and all of that, so... I'm glad it's only a microphone issue that's propped up. What's the other thing I'm after? Yeah, it does tend to be that way, but hey, at least you can stream. I'm doing well. It's been a while. It's mostly just been like work stuff, making really cool anim on the side. Yeah, life is good. One thing you might notice is I have a love for the big focal length. As much as Ned really dislikes it. It's one of my favorite things to mess with. I think I might have to go back to a 30 because 120 is a bit overkill for what I'm doing here. I'm also going to scale up my camera because I hate trying to find a small camera within a scene. It's easier to manage something that's colossal opposed to something that's the size of a pea. So what I'm trying to do now is trying to find an angle which I kind of feel like a character's running past screen as well as navigating. But I kind of also want to have an establishing shot. So I'm probably going to mess around for a little bit trying to find a kind of interesting angle that demonstrates everything without... Maybe I could do an establishing shot. Have it up somewhere like that. Get some really funky camera view going on. Maybe I can bump up the camera focal length a little bit. So what I'll be spending most of my time is literally finding interesting camera angles, because it's difficult. Once you find them, you can create some really interesting shots. Also just realized the implications of the questions I got asked earlier and basically didn't respond because of microphone issues. So I guess it'll reiterate the earlier question of what games do I play. Mostly I've been playing some Monster Hunter World. I know it was released a while ago, but decided to get back in and play the DLC. Got some mates that really wanted to get into it, and I spent some time doing that, enjoying playing dual blade or spear, or glaive, insect glaive specifically. I just love the aerial combat that you can get out of it. And then when I've been on my downtime, I've been playing RuneScape because I'm a child at heart, and it's nice to get back into some of those things sometimes. Kind of wondering if I should be maybe doing a little bit of camera roll swap, so like maybe having it from the perspective of the shooter, just because he's got a very nice aerial view, which I think would play really nicely to some of the effects stuff I'd like to do. So I might just push this camera right up over next to him. A little rotate. So I'm just pressing F on the keyboard to focus on the camera at the moment. See if I can make this a little less ugly. Maybe see if I can get the guy shooting on the right. Kind of like that. So it's looking like you're shooting down the barrel. I get that first person shooter vibes going on. Might be nice for a little establishing, but it also is kind of ugly because I would like to be able to spread it out just a little. Okay, yeah, let's not use this angle. That is not very appealing, especially with this type of camera. I might just start using the orbit cam. I think I might be able to get some better angles with that, opposed to what I'm doing at the moment, which is kind of just seeing if I can find something interesting, opposed to working with what I know should do something pretty cool. And unfortunately, a lot of this will be just messing around trying to find camera angles. It is unfortunately part of what happens when you are trying to create something interesting, opposed to just making motion. Finding these camera angles means that your storytelling is jumped up. So what I might do, because I want to keep this as a little focus point, I might start off here, you know, have some intrigue of what's this guy shooting at, why is he following a dude, and then we can possibly do like a little whip down and just see that last bit of him before we cut to another camera. So I'm just going to do a little bit of previs with this, which is just going to be getting... Yeah, I like the down the barrel idea. It's just, I don't think I can get it to read how I want it to. Like, I'll play with this for a little, and if I don't like it, I'll try down the barrel again. But what I'm going to be doing is just blocking out some sections where I think things are going to be interesting. And then over the duration of a... beautiful. My favorite spammers have popped in. But yeah, what I'll be doing is I'll be doing key cuts over this one section. So I'll do a key on one side and then I'll do a key on the other, and that will function as a camera cut. Come from here to here, which is a beautiful viewing of a rock at the moment. Also gonna just go into my channel box and just get rid of some of these rotate values. the joys of using something like an orbit cam is I just drag things along and then change back to object mode, which I'm using Control Shift to do. It also allows you to change your orients that you're rotating around. Yeah, at the moment all I'm doing is just getting some vague camera motions that I'd like. So what I'm thinking is, because he does this one shot here, bang, we'll have some debris like scattering on like some of the terrain that's around him, and this will help kind of sell that we're in the same scene of stuff flying past. And then because he has that second shot, which we might not see on camera, but we can have another spray of debris, and that will kind of help you feel like this is a continuation of the shots. We have the advantage of this camera also being done on the same scene. So if this was a production, sometimes you won't have the luxury of being able to do camera cuts within the scene. You'll be handed this scene on its entirety, opposed to having this ability to cut. So sometimes you have overlap scenes which will have the same motion on each side, but cut slightly differently, opposed to being a clean cut like this. But because this is a self-contained little project, you can take advantage of having clean cuts. And because I want to keep the motion is continually going forward, I'm going to have the camera feel like it's always catching up with him, but not feeling like it's actually successfully doing it. I kind of want this camera to feel like it's also got a little bit of whip to it. Like it's a cameraman really desperately trying to catch up. But I don't know how appealing that's going to actually look in practice. Because I also want to keep him kind of stable within frame. So I think I might have to do a little camera cut here. I'm going to take advantage of this jump as well. Try to do a little cut on action. Now, technically I have broken the line, but because I've done this as a semi-establishing, breaking the line here isn't too bad, because you're not really establishing locations yet. The moment I establish a location, like a full establishing shot, or have consistent shots in sequence, so you have an idea where the character is, then I'd be too worried about doing this action. But I do kind of want Thor to feel like he's on more of this side, so maybe I won't break. So this is technically a crossing of the line, but this is hopefully not going to be. Because we want to keep consistency with this. The more consistency you can apply to a series of shots, the more successful they'll be. Because this is really just a sense of storytelling. So what I might do, this could be a little bit dodgy, but might work really nicely, is I'm going to do a little whip pan when he comes up to here. Technically it's not a proper whip pan, but it's going to function as it, because it's going to have a little bit of screen wiping as it happens. this is where some of these shots go from trying to act towards the camera. So when I do a second pass of this, I might sit there and be like, oh, this looks horrible from a specific angle, but the storytelling is really nice. So I could also then do a polish pass. So like, I really like this pose still. This pose reads really nicely, but once the camera goes down and looks up, that pose still reads really nicely, like he's about to really throw himself up. But that pose, ooh, that's ugly. So I'd have to redesign that pose to fit within the camera work that I'm doing. 90% of the work is still done, but it's now just going to be aiming towards what the camera wants to see. So I'm going to just view this in sequence at the moment, so I'll possibly just put that on the big screen opposed to the tiny one that's in the corner. Yep, behind that. And I just want to see how this will feel. And that feels cool. Like, I think once you get some stuff in there, that's gonna be like a really strong feeling, like it's an intense sequence. Definitely feel like I need an extra key in through here to really help sell that action up here. But I kind of like these as camera cuts. And this is what a camera cut can do for an animation, is it goes from feeling like it's just a body mechanics exercise to something that's actually a little bit more tangible and viewable. And if you are a student doing this, like if you can get more of this stuff into your show reels, showing solid body mechanics as well as like your understanding of how things look in motion through a camera, you're going to really start pushing towards stuff that most other students won't be doing. It's good to show that you understand body mechanics on a turntable or something like that, but also showing that you have the creativity to really push cameras and like how your animation could look if it was in the right circumstances. So what I'm going to be doing on this shot, hopefully now, is I want it to feel like we're resetting up what the goals are. So we've shown that there's been this sense of danger of this guy with a gun. What I'm going to be doing now is trying to re-establish that this is the goal that our character is going to be going for. Best way I can think about that is getting something which puts our enemy on this line and our ally on this line. With the overlooming threat of the hammer just floating there. Also trying to get something that like doesn't obscure the line too much. And what I've got here is camera clipping. So if you look in here and how our character is being obscured by the camera. So there we go. So what I have to do is I pull this back just a little bit. And now I'm having issues with our hammer becoming obscured. I like the framing of this, but it's still not quite right. Especially considering I would like Thor to be on the other shoulder, so we're looking over this shoulder. And we want to kind of keep them still within screen space. So we want to kind of avoid anything that's outside this mid section, because things that start getting over there are kind of just obscured by the viewer, like the viewer's eye. They're not wanting to look for it. Where if you provide all the information center-ish of screen on your 1/3 lines, or slightly off those 1/3 lines, you start really focusing the viewer's attention. And I kind of want it to feel like we're on a little bit of lean, only because then it feels like we're unsettled. We're like in a different position. I'll do a camera shake pass later on as well. But this is just doing the initial block-in for where I think cameras would look nice. So I'm just going to do a little playback of this as well, just to feel how it's looking. If the timing feels like it's going to be appropriate, or if I need to extend certain things. Like, I kind of want this cut, but I kind of don't like it. Because we're seeing him from behind, and this, I need to replace some of this anim. I could either redo the anim work to keep this angle and keep it more interesting. But I feel like because we've got him going center of screen, that's not going to be something appealing to look at. So I've got to find a different angle for this shot that's going to feel like it does the same job, but is more visually appealing for the stuff that we have in here. So I'll drop back to perspective mode. I'll drag back my anim camera over here, which I'll be doing a lot of the viewing for the camera, like what's actually in view. Trying not to get my camera stuck in a random piece of geo. I've got to just try to think what kind of camera angle would work for the same effect, but not have the same troubles. Alternative is I could do a little break, like just a break from the action. Cut it really low, like the camera really low to where Thor is. You just see him like really slamming back down. If you want to keep this fast pace, because you've had him exit screen mid, so it would need him to appear more screen mid. Either play catch up with the camera, so we're like, oh, we're catching up to where he is, or we could play to it's gonna be a little bit tighter, I reckon, because I would like to be able to get the angle where I can see over his shoulder, but I might be able to push it from something like this, which is close to the angle I had previously, but still keeps a goal step. So maybe I'll go for here. First goal is here, second goal is here, and it means I'm also not breaking line of action too much, or where the camera should be. Also, we'll probably have to do a focal length change, because we are getting further and further away to get the shot I'd like. I'll pop back into world just to drop the camera directly down, as opposed to doing it on the axes that it's currently on. So we'll be coming from that to that, which is still taking up the same screen space. And then when he comes down, what I can do is tilt the camera like that. in. Whoop. Which might have the same issues as the last one did. But I think it's also defining a clear goal set. So I'll just play through that again, just see how that feels. And that is not a nice cut. And this is what doing cameras can feel like sometimes, is you're finding things that are advantageous to your overall animation, and you want to find things that flatter it. If you do tend to find things that aren't working to your advantage, you know that you can clean it up in the final pass. So if you find the cameras work really nicely but the anim doesn't, you can always try to rework the anim to fit to that camera, because ultimately it's all about the storytelling, not so much the elements that are actually in it. You know, being precious with your keyframes doesn't help anyone. Whereas if you're willing to make cuts because you want it to look good, then you're doing the thing that makes your story interesting. Like for him to just zoop past camera, maybe, because currently he is, but it's over to 1 frame, so there's no blend in through this section and through here between these two keys. So if I want him to like slam in, he's not going to be able to. So I'm just going to do a little quick check on my graph editor, which is living on a different screen. Here it is. And I'm going to check the translate values for this. Because I don't like how he's got this curve to him. Just double check that's the right value. Actually doesn't. Z. E. So I know he needs to get into kind of close to that, but I think that's too much. So Z is definitely, so it has to be on the X, I mean, so it must definitely be on this. There we go. So what I'm going to do now is in camera, I'm just going to use this as a guide to keep him in the spot that I want him to be in. I'm going to do this by just mainly dragging the keys over. Because I know I want him here-ish, and let me just find the moment where he jumps there. So I want all these keys to be kind of moved up. Normally I'd do this manually, but because I've got an input here, I'm just going to blend ease to the side that I want it on. And let's just see how that looks. Closer, still broken, but has a closer effect to what I'd like. So all I'm just going to do is grab this obscurely distant key and just bump him over. So that key's not too important back over here, but if I can get it so it's a little bit closer. Well, not perfect. It's definitely closer to where I want it to be. I'd even give this one just a little bit of a bump. So this is what animation to camera tends to be, is you're sacrificing some of the anim location to make it feel like it works for screen. Like that arc right now isn't perfect, but that can be cleaned up in a anim pass. And I might do a camera cut after that step anyway. I just want this landing to feel, because I want this to camera shake when he comes past. If I wanted to make this a bit more dramatic, maybe I could go down like here. And overall that might be a nicer composition. You'll find when you're doing this that coming up with compositions which look interesting is really important to making the animation not boring. Make people feel invested to whatever story you're telling. I'm going to do another sneaky con action, I reckon. Yeah, I have a horrible tendency to really love some Dutch angles. It's not for everyone, so, you know, depending on your director or whoever you're working with, you know, make sure that you're fitting in with whatever style guide they're using. But because this is a little freeform stuff, I'm gonna just kind of go with whatever I feel like works for this scene. Especially once you start getting like some camera shake and stuff coming in there. Yeah. Especially once I get that extra keyframe of that land, so it's like a motion blur, and then I'll do a little extra settle on this hip. Especially once you have that contact and then a camera shake, that's going to feel really cool and dramatic. I kind of want to cut it before he gets too far away though. Maybe when he contacts there, that's where I'll do my cut. So I'll keep it key here as my cut. This I think is going to be more focused on where it's going than what his goal is, so because I know he's going to get the hammer, I'm going to try to get the hammer in frame for this one. Also find that when you're doing camera movements and stuff like that, that trying to find, things that will help sell your storytelling and focusing on them. Like, what is the goal of the character in this scene? What is the motivation? What's the steps they have to take to get to it? Technically that's a break of breaking the line, but just want to see how it feels. If it feels like you don't even notice it, then yeah, you'll notice that. All sorts of really ugly angle. Yeah, that's you're flipping with your enemy there. So these are things that you tend to avoid. Is like, there's a bad guy here. You don't want your good guy to occupy that space the next time, because it's really disorientating for the viewer. And you tend to do a lot of little things like this where you're making the decision, maybe I want to try something like this. It's good to look at it and then objectively say it's a bad composition or a bad camera angle and accept it. You save yourself time by making those decisions that this isn't going to look good, or it's a poor decision. So I'm also going to just zero some of these out, which are getting close to zero anyway. Because as much as I love Dutch angles, I don't want them all the time. Also, just go quickly do a save because no one wants Maya to crash, and you sit there going, oh no, I've lost all my camera work for the hour. So that's just a little friendly reminder. Go save your Maya project or your project you're working on. Maybe this is the one that I do a all over the shoulder of the bad guy, reminding you that point of view. An advantage if I do this is I don't have to animate the guard doing as much. Being smart with your animation time, what you can fit in that. If you're on a time limit, try to work with something that's going to save you, a couple hours. If you only got 8 hours to work on something, try to get the most, value out of what you're working on. I think if I can get the guard's shoulder into this. So what I got happening right now is the camera clipping is just cutting off all that guard. So what I'm going to do is my attributor and just change the near clip pane instead of being 10 to 1. Fix some of the earlier stuff I had where I was trying to get lower to the ground but couldn't. Yeah, so So for this shot, I really want it to be a little bit lower to the ground. Not by much, just a little. I'll delete that key, so we've only got 2 keys for this section as well. Bop to bop. Now this one. What something like this will help do is also establish the threat of this guy is still there. It's not like he's forgotten about our main character doing all this cool jumpy stuff. Just go bring the scene back into a kind of just like a little showdown of like these guys are trying to outskill each other. So I'm just gonna play through that, have a look. I think if I get some camera motion onto this, like, oh god, guy's coming for me, you know, something like that. Ooh, maybe not that much of a touch, more of it down. And what I can do is go 1 key that way, press S, and grab that key. Drag it back. So I still have some camera motion on it, but it's not as drastic because I want this to feel like he's really whipping around to catch our hero. So this might work, might also not. But I want to see if I can get this so it feels like you're catching that slide as well. I think once this has that extra key in there, I won't hate it as much. And this, I think I need to just see how there's that little jitter in through there, instead of being like a... through this process, I'm mostly just doing an experimental, like, going off experience. You know, I've read a lot of film theory stuff, which is just like mostly how cameras should move. Some just general good rules, like, you know, if you're going to keep your character within a side of the shot, try to keep it consistent. Make sure that you're not losing your characters within the space, or if you are losing them, you're losing them purposefully. Things that try to keep your goals well established. Like, you know, bad guy has to be in frame to remind the viewer that bad guy is still there. Elements like that. But if you want to try to get something that's acting to a more realistic camera, you definitely use reference, which would enable you to get closer to those shots. If I was trying to do something more accurate to a Marvel film, for example, in that type of cutting, I'd be pulling up some reference from Thor films, or I'd be pulling up reference from Into the Spider-Verse or something like that, because that camera moves are really freaking dramatic, but also really beautiful. But what I'm doing here is just more of a little experimental play around to see if I can get something that fits with the style that I'd like. So I'm going to just go into Animbo at the moment. What I'm doing is I'm probably just going to use the push and pull value, which is just like pushing the curve up or down. And I only really want to do it on the rotate values. I'll just give that a little push that way, I reckon. I'm still getting that plateauing, so I'm going to try to do just look into the curves, and you see that there's this is all S between the two. It's close to what I want, but because I'm starting from a fresh camera, I should just go grab all these, select them all, tangents auto, and hopefully that's, I have to do the second lot as well. So what auto tangents tends to do, specifically in most keyframes, is it tries to limit the amount of that. Like, it should be equaling it out, so we've got this like flat line because we're coming into a new camera, and equalizing it out. For some reason it's not wanting to do that, so I'm just going to manually go in and tweak the cameras so they're feeling like they're a little bit more straight to start off with. And then I'll go into the second lot of keyframes, and I'll probably just like blend them with the next lot, so just a little bit more smooth. Kind of like that. And because we've got this ease to a stop, I want it to ease, but I don't want it to ease that much. So what I'll do is I'll select all the keys for this, insert key, grab these last keys that are at the end, because I want him to kind of get to that position. I'm going to pull all that key out. So once we get to that position, put these on auto tangent. Just going to give a little bit of a stop without actually stopping the camera. And I've used the final frame that I want it to end on. And I've just used the frame in front of it as the where I want the ease to start. Still not sure what I want to do with this camera and this action in through here. So I'm kind of just going to leave that at this is the last stage for this camera. But I'm going to play through it, just see if that's, I feel like that's a solid amount of camera cuts, or if there's anything I should do to tidy it up. I feel like I could probably, for this camera, once I get those extra keyframes in there, is possibly get a little push in, just so it feels like we're actually following the character, especially when he starts moving. So that's where I feel like it's the weakest at the moment, because we're not forcing that full visualization of motion yet. It's just kind of static with a little bit of a turn where I want it to feel like you're following our character. So I'm just going to give that a little bit of a nudge forward. I'll do that manually because I kind of want it to have a little bit of distortion to like how it's tracking. Don't want it to feel like it's moved by a graph editor. Alright, let's see how that plays now. And you'll find that if you're doing these cameras that you'll just be doing minute changes and then like adjusting tiny stuff over and over, but it's how you get this like consistent flow. Like this cut works, but I kinda don't like it anymore. I think it either has to be cut earlier or a bit late. Bang. Nothing. So I think I either need to pull back further so it doesn't feel like there's this little disjoint, or I move some other stuff around, because I kind of want that shot to establish what's going on here, and I think I want that cut on action. So I'm thinking I might actually grab these keys, drag them across a little bit more, just a tad. Doesn't have to be overly much, just enough so when we cut to this shot, feels like our motions carry through a little bit stronger. Might also want to start a little bit higher in frame. I was going to be trying to keep like certain elements somewhat in the same spot. I'm worried with this cut that there's not quite what I want to be happening. There's some really cool stuff in this shot, but it's not reading how I would like it to. Another alternative is what I could do is bring forward that shot, so it's a little bit earlier, but I'd like this as a little establishing shot. Could also be that I want to, instead of starting this close to our character, because we don't know who he is yet, he's pushing this forward so he has to run past. So I'll go into world, because I want this to be moving along a world axis more. Push it across. This gives our chance for a character to enter frame and establish that there's obviously someone that we haven't met yet. Don't know who they are, don't know who they are, don't know who they are. Oh look, character. Definitely some of these shots, like I like this shot, I like that shot. This shot's kind of cool, I really like that. Still not sold on this one, but I reckon it will work. And I really like this shot because of this. That slide really feels amplified with that. There's still some bum keyframes like that one, that would definitely need work if we're animating to this camera. That one could definitely be stronger. But that's what setting these cameras up will do. So you kind of have a foundation of what you're working off and building on. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to copy this key, place it at the end. Just because I want to see from a static camera if that shot's remotely how I want it to look. Because we're moving the camera in this direction, kind of want to reverse that. As much as I like that, I kind of want to pull it this way. So when we cut into this camera, we're also pulling in a similar direction. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to copy, paste a couple of frames away. This one, place it on that frame, just because I want to see if that's going to help the overall storytelling. Really don't think it does. So I think I will have to either keep a camera move very similar to that one by having the camera a little bit more that way, and then when we get through, it kind of reveals our following camera of who we're following. Sorry. Probably boost that down a little bit too. There's also an ease onto this that I don't like. So I'm going to go into my orbit control that I've gotten through here. Press F on the section that I want to check. And I'm going to grab those two lots of keyframes here. And then go tangents linear. So this will make it that the motion is, because it's only 2 points, it's doing a nice smooth like run through. Bang. I'll probably do the same for all the shots that have only 2 keyframes. Or at least the start of the shots. All I'm doing now is just like repeatedly watching the same little sections. Because at the moment there's a little weird twist that I don't like on this one, which is coming from the keys down here. That one looks okay. Yeah, that one's alright. Probably have a look at this. You just start going through, like, you notice a lot of this stuff when you're doing a little anim pass of like certain elements which feel out of place. You notice that when you're doing these animations, you wouldn't really notice or think so much about cameras specifically, but once you start like really messing with camera angles and stuff, like your animation just starts to pop in some ways that you normally wouldn't think it would. Like, and as a student, like if you can get more things that like stand out to someone's potential employer, you know, the higher the chance of you actually getting a role there. I'll do a little comparison to like if I was showing this as just a standard piece in comparison. So let's just hide that. So this is what it is. So all that animation stuff that I have so far is looking like this. Which is okay, but you just add a little bit of camera work. Like, it doesn't have to be much, maybe, you know, an hour of camera work for something that's only this long. And you just push it to an entirely different, you know, viewing experience. So what I'll do now is I'll start adding a little bit of camera shake. I want to first add this stuff in here because I'm missing a key or two. I'd kind of like to have those keys in there, so I want to clean up that pose, that, because there's like 6 frames where I'm missing anim in through there. Well, not specifically missing anim, but you know, anim is not viewable because he's in the air still. So I'm just using F on the keyboard to get around. So I know for a fact that on around here, yep, there, this pose looks like garbage from below. So what I'll do is I'll go find my torn off copy of this. I will start maneuvering things to make it read from this pose. In fact, I might even just keep this one separate, so it's... Or maybe I have to add an extra key in through here. Because how many keys does this hold up? 1, 2... Okay. So what I'm going to do, opposed to that, is I'm going to grab this one down here. Because that's 1, 2. Because we're animating through the camera, I'm going to just grab the object world for this. Because I know I want him higher up in frame, I'm just going to do that. See how that reads. 1, 2, 3. Cool. So copy this one, paste it down here. 3. Yeah, probably drop that back down. Just copying this key because that's where his feet should be for the last pose. Yep. 1, 2, 3. And I'll do an adjustment on this pose slightly, just to tweak it up so it's not the same. Close, but not exactly the same. This is mostly just to break up, you know, we're seeing repeat frames. Because I am only doing anim on 2s, you tend to get a little bit of repeat in frame appearance. It has no roll on it. Okay, cool. Also want these to now start looking good in camera opposed to not. So we'll just grab this one and just level that one out, squeeze it together a bit more. Get this rotate on this hand. Gonna grab these fingers. Give them a tiny amount of oops. Curl. So I'm just selecting the curl attribute, which should select all of them that I've selected. Sometimes it doesn't work for all the rigs. Like sometimes rigs don't like having just the value changed. So way to get around that is selecting the attribute type. Because I want to break up this silhouette of this hand as well, because it's very generic. It's almost very flat and uninteresting. Just gonna get a little bit of love, just like that. So I'm just using control there to deselect. In this arm, a little bit more interesting. Like it's not much and you probably wouldn't notice it normally, but just adding you know, a little bit of breakup on the fingers just helps sell it just a little bit more, especially when you're doing, you know, fast motion. Like if you've only got limited keyframes that you're animating to, really try to sell that you've got more in there than you actually do. The more little bits and pieces that you can display, you know, how to do well, the better. Just break out the silhouettes a little bit, making sure that they read in 3D space as well as like 2D space, because this is ultimately from this point onwards going to be working within the 2D space that's on screen. Yeah, because like in comparison between those two frames, that hand shape, even though it's in the bottom of the screen, is 100 times more interesting. If you ever want to practice just getting interesting posing and stuff, do posing on a 3D model or on a 3D character like you would a life drawing. So, you know, go to a life drawing class and spend your time posing the model as you see it. Gives you the experience that, you know, you're learning how things look within space and trying to match them. Same way someone would do figure drawing just to understand anatomy and posing, or how body shape moves. trying to do now is just breaking up this silhouette so it's not so boring from the that to that. I'm thinking I might just give some rotation to this arm. I don't think I'm going to be able to get a really nice... I'm mostly a PC gamer. Have been since I was a young bloke. Started off on a good old Game Boy when I was about 5, and then kind of just progressively just started using PC stuff more and more. I still have a Nintendo Switch and stuff still floating around because that's the only way I'm going to get my Pokemon fix, but yeah, mostly PC gamer nowadays. Just going to move the pole vector instead of messing around with this hand. This rig has some a really nice elbow rotation, but because we're animating to camera right now, it's kind of irrelevant. As you can see now, I've just got like a slightly stronger elbow pose for that second one. It's nothing too major, but it will help break up the silhouette so it feels like there's more motion in the scene than there actually is. And then we get up to here. This is going to be a really pain in the butt pose, because I need to break up a silhouette from the rear, which is not the easiest thing to do. It's doable, but it's not the easiest. So what I'm probably going to have to do is fake the movement. So there to there. Actually, an alternative to doing that is I could see if he looks nicer. He's just a little bit lower in screen. He does, but it's not. Well, maybe if I do something like that. I think I can play with that a little bit more, because I'm just forcing a little bit more angle into his body. It's a little bit nicer of a pose to fit into the sequence. So I'll just do a little play through, see how that looks. Still feel like I could probably get away with it just having this not as high. Like I want to have that snap, but I think I could get away with it not feeling like the snap is as much there. Only because I have the joy of the camera cuts now. So something you will notice that if you are doing this is you can start doing a lot with your camera cuts. Like, they allow you some freedoms that you normally don't have the luxury of. This will probably make it look funky from external camera. So the test cam that I've been using might look a bit weird, but for every other camera, specifically the ones that we'll be using, this will look so much better. And this is why having some strong key poses early on, opposed to doing them like as a straight ahead, you get to take advantage of, you know, your poses are good, but they're just not in camera, so you can kind of just tweak them in camera. Saves you some effort later on. So I have this hand outreach there and closed up here. So what I might do to keep this feeling like it's part of the same scene is do a very dodgy, grab all those keys, press S, copy those keys, go over here, paste, hey. So now we got the same pose that we've got in the previous one, but I could start doing some tweaks to it, like maybe I want the hand to be slightly more rotated, a bit more out, or a little bit more in. Something that's going to help break up this silhouette a little bit more. Fingers can be really strong tools for breaking up your silhouettes. Like, I don't mind that knee being where it is, but it's definitely a bit more distracting than I would like. All I'm doing at the moment is just like really just noodling out some pose elements. I'm wondering if I just get a little bit more like that. It's not quite overlapping, and then I can use this knee pole vector out like that. So what I'm trying to do at the moment is just get a little internal silhouette. Just a tiny little bit. Just because it's breaking up the this section through here, so it's not so boring. Let's see how that looks within that sequence and through there. I feel like that's going to be a little bit stronger, even if it's not perfect. It's at least selling the story stronger. Do apologise, the playback will be a bit slow because of the buffer. Yeah, definitely looking like that's a little bit stronger, especially when you start adding the extra keys at the start of this one. Bang. The alternative, instead of doing a little crash in through here, what we could do is we start the camera up a little bit higher, so it's like up here, opposed to where it is at the moment. Only because we might be able to just sneak in a little bit of the legs or something. And hang on, where are they? Come on, legs, come into frame. Opposed to that, start somewhere like that. So when you drop, you feel like you're right there. But I feel that's kind of gonna be more problems than solving. So I reckon I'm gonna mess with a little blend, see if how close I can get it to look. And so what key do I want to start with? So that's the landing pose, that's the up pose. So first, I'm going to select all these keys through here. And I'm going to use the tween machine button, which is kind of like a button which allows you to like blend between two keyframes. Plugin called Tween Machine, which has been around since forever. There's a lot of tween like little plugins that you can use in Maya, which are fantastic for doing just what I did then. The alternative is you start using something like Animbot, which has all the other tools plugged in, but it's all about finding things that work for your workflow in particular. I know some of the guys back here don't like using Animbot because it's not a tool that works for them. But for me, I find it like integral to my workflow. So going from what scene is on this one? What leg is up? That leg. So that should be the leg that lands first. Which I think it does. Yeah. Cool. So this is the leg I'm going to pull up like that. Bang. Alright. So what I'm doing at the moment, it's very dirty in camera, or external out of camera, but will look really nice in camera. If you ever start working within Maya as, doing anim to camera, take advantage of the things that you're never going to see, because you have that as an option. If you know nothing's going to be in camera, don't animate things that are out of camera. Unless you're planning on doing drastic reshoots or like moving where things are, you don't need to do it. So nothing, not in frame, foot in frame, that will be a landing frame, and that will be, okay, cool. So what I'm trying to do at the moment is just make it so it feels like there's a little smear in through this. So it is like finally getting all the way up. I feel like he's actually landing opposed to just teleporting there. Like realistically what I could do if I want to make this feel a little bit more intense is I kind of just pull all that up. this will be a land pose. So I'll grab this pose, all of the keys in here. Yep. I'll just tween machine them closer to the landing pose. Take advantage of the tools you have. Bang. Nice. How many frames is he down? Enough. So what I'm going to do here is take advantage of the fact that I have a contact. I can kind of just make it feel like he's taken a little bit more impact than he actually has. This is just through moving the root node, or the root of his rig. It's just making it feel like the impact's a little bit stronger than it actually is. When I start getting camera shake in there as well, that will help amp it up even further. So I'll just watch through it a couple of times just to see if that's making sense. I'm noticing there's a little bit of something funky going on with this leg down here. That I think is just a translate issue. So I'm just gonna blend between. And that's the joys of when you're working in camera, you can kind of just go, oh, this just needs to be nudged right, and it should all work. As you can see, just like from the beginning, this is already pushed really nicely into something that's really nice to look at. The only thing I'm not liking so far is like that, and that's mostly because of this foot. Only reason is because I want to be able to see that foot pass, because previously it's back here, it's out of screen, you don't know where it is. And it's kind of nice when you have something that's doing that, so it feels like it's actually passing through. You know, I'll probably have to hold the other foot back just a little bit longer, but I kind of want it to feel like the character's actually got a proper push off. Also, I need to keep that foot a little bit more that way. because I've also opened up that screen space a little bit more, can start pushing that foot forward a bit more. Whole point is to try to make it so things are clear what's happening within those scenes, especially when you're transitioning from something being out of frame into frame. You want the viewer to feel like they're being led through the scene, opposed to you know, forced. Because I got a little bit forced perspective in this as well, I need to kind of correct for it. Because I've like kind of done a camera cut as well, I don't have to focus too much on the rest of the frames past this point. I just need to focus on the frames that are actually viewable. This is where cameras are really useful as an animator, because you can take advantage of, you know, there being cuts, there being, you know, breaks in the action. You get a lot more animation quality out without having to put more work in, or very little work, should I say. This is a sequence right now is feeling really solid. Also means that I don't have to do as much anim work for this guard. Like, I'd like to do more in this section, but overall it's much nicer than he was previously. He's there, he's still threatening, but he doesn't have to have as many actions. But what I will do now, because I want to kind of push the camera shake still, is I'm going to go to the main. So on this we've got a sorry, not on the main, cam group, where have we put that? It should be on the main. Oh, this doesn't have shake attached. Okay, that's easy. So what I will show is how to do camera shake. So normally you can get a shake. We have a shake attribute to this orbit cam, which allows us to basically just have some noise applied to the X and Y rotates, just to get some camera shake in there. But you can do it manually, and that's what I'll show in a minute. So once I get to a point which should have camera shake. So here's a moment where I would like shake. About here. So we got this camera little offset control. You can either use the main offset or the cam orbit offset, which is located directly above our camera. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go set a key, which is zeroing. I'm going to set another key where there won't be any camera shake. So probably here, because that's the end of the frame. Here I'll probably do another one because I want a little bit of camera shake in there. What I'll do is in my Windows animation graph editor, thank you, I'm going to grab the translate X, Y and Z. I'm going to zoom in on those with the F key, and I'm just going to make a key every frame. I appear to have got them all. Wonderful. So what I'll do for these is I will add a noise wave on these. You can do this manually. So if you're doing this manually, what you would do is you would literally just grab the X coordinate, you just drag it up and down, you create some kind of chaotic mess. And then what you tend to do, or what I find is useful to do, is like kind of bring these down. You can either do that with your scale keys or move keys tool, which, so if you highlighted keys, you can like drag them up and down, squish them either way, which can be nice, and just try to keep it so it's got like this little build up. And then when you need a peak of say like you want the shake to be really intense, you pull that section down, bang. You can do that as like a little escalating series of keys if you like. It helps just, you know, breathe a little extra life into some of these shots. So what I'm doing at the moment is just extending it out just a little bit more, so I've got a little bit more lead up to the camera shake. If you're using Animbot, you can select all these, and you can use the blend. Where are you? Come in. So under all these selection, you can blend these. So left or right. Generally do it to the way that you're coming from, and that just eases off into a certain section till you want that shake to really come into play. I'm also going to do a save right now because Animbot is yelling at me to do so. Setting yourself little reminders to do saves is really important, especially if you're working on something for a long period of time and you don't want to lose anything that you've just done. Sometimes it's good because you can try to recreate the same thing and come up with better workflows and plans, but still means that you're losing time. And as you can see in there, it's just a little bit of shake. It's nothing too much. It's enough to emphasize something's about to happen. Because I would like lightning and stuff to start coming around him when he starts jumping, I think that will really help sell with that rumble. So I'm going to do a second lot of shake here with my offset group, and because I'm really lazy, I'm just going to copy the previous shake that I have and just give it a little bit of extra flair. Just give it a little bit of extra timing, like retiming. So just going to grab this, just going to move the keys around a little bit more. Because I specifically want it when as soon as he hits the ground. Bang. And then what I can do is, if I wanted a little bit of extra noise, drag out this one. Boop, boop, boop. Because you've already made your noise, you can cheat and copy and paste it. Give it a little bit of a wiggle, just to break it up so it's not the same as previous noise that you've made. Because I also want this to ease off at the end, because we've already had our, I think I'm just going to use my blend ease tool in Animbot. You can do this manually through the scale tool. I'm just going to play through that, just make sure my, the vibration isn't too vigorous and unpleasant to view. It's getting there. It's definitely starting to look more interesting. So what I'm going to do, because I think that's a little bit too much, is I am going to just grab it all, grab my scale tool, specifically the ones that are in that bottom line, not the top one, because that's scale. I'm just going to give it a little... All I'm doing is just giving it a little bit of a tweak, so it's not as powerful as of a shake. Another way you can do shake if you really want to is expressions. I find expressions are useful, but ultimately more trouble than they're worth because you have to manually keep changing the values. That started to look pretty cool. So what I'm going to do now is just make a little bit of a cheat effect. So I'm just going to hide that. Hide that one because I don't need it right now. I'm just going to go back to origin. Which is about here. I'm just going to create a cube. Because, you know, everything starts with a standard cube. So I'm just going to drag that up, make it a little bit bigger so it's easier to see. I'm gonna bevel it with a Control B. Kind of like a little diamondy shape. So I'm just gonna make the sections really low. I'm gonna give it 2 segments so it's more of a sphere. I'm gonna add depth to it. It's kind of like this really pointy ball. So all I'm doing at the moment is making like a really cheap effect, so I've got to turn mesh translate on. Whoop. So get this really spiky ball. And I want this to kind of be a little impact. So what I'm going to do from this is grab the verts on the end of this. Just drag them up. Maybe not drag them. Come on by. Thank you. Just because I want to get this like really interesting little shape. I could do it with a sphere or a cone. But I kind of just want this kind of direct shape. Kind of want to make it a little bit aggressive too. It's not going to be a nice piece of geo, it's going to look pretty ugly. Especially when smoothed. Nasty. But I'm just making a cheap effect, so it's not really that important how it looks. Just basically trying to get a effect going on. This is going to be for the bullets, because I want the bullets to affect the ground a little bit, just so they have a little bit of a different flavor, basically. I'm just going to assign these 2 materials. Probably just like Lamberts. Nothing too fancy. I'm gonna make one yellow, the other red. This is just to make some bullet strokes. Don't have to be too accurate. Just gonna give them a quick name. Make them a little group. What I'm gonna do next is grab this one. Just gonna be keying the scales on these, scales and rotates, all that. Because I would like them to kind of feel like they've been striking. So what I'm going to do is also change the middle point of these, so it's actually at the end. Like that. Make it over like 2 frames. A little rotation on it. Do the same thing with the other one, but just slightly offset. It might help if I actually change the pivot point for this one. That's just a little bit slow. I'm just gonna speed it up a little bit. Not wanting to do it through the timeline, so I'm just going to have to manually go into Graph Editor. And then you just do the same thing you did with the other one, which is just shortening it up. I want to have a little bit longer life than that. let it snap. I should snap it to 3 keys, or 2 keys at least. Yeah, that'll do. Easy. So I'll probably get rid of these sub keys then, because they're irrelevant. Now what I'm going to do is just grab these over. See when the guy does his gunshot. Bang. Bang. There. So what I'm going to do is grab these. It's not much, but once you start getting a couple of these going, they start looking really cool. It's when you start looking through camera. I'll do it. This is the little muzzle flash. Could make this a little bit more interesting with a different muzzle flash, but should be fine. I'm not going to do any parents for this because I really don't think I need to for a single frame. I'm just going to offset these one more because I think they're off. Be out a bit more forward. So what I'm thinking for the next week is I'm going to start doing some more effects. So I'm going to polish this up. I'm going to hopefully add this final sequence, clean up this guy, give him some extra keyframes, possibly a reload animation for this section. Just so he doesn't feel like he's on IKs, because he currently is. I'd like to be able to give this little bit at the end a little extra fight sequence, so another 40 odd frames where Thor beats the bejesus out of Blocky Dude. So hopefully by next week we can have some even more fancy animation going on. Kind of want Thor's eye line to always line up with a bad guy here. Just so it feels like there's a real, threat between the two. Having this kind of camera angle also helps with power dynamic. Makes it feel like Thor is in the disadvantage, the guy with the gun. So yeah, so that's where I think I'll call it today. I hope you guys have enjoyed watching the process of how to do some cameras, and hope to see you all next week. But I'll show you how it's all ended up, and I'll show you where it began, how it looked before we had to do all these cool cameras. This is what it looked like before. There's going to be a little bit of discrepancies in this section because I've changed the jump a little bit, but just the difference between camera moves and having a static cam is huge. So please take advantage of it. Anyway, I'll see you all next week.